names, familiar faces. Hope everyone is staying safe, staying well. As Steve mentioned, going to share some results from some research that we've been doing over the last, call it 2.5 months on a weekly basis, both amongst DIYers as well as contractors. So I'll try to move through things quickly since I'm the only one speaking. I know how annoying it can be to have someone talk at you for 30 or 45 minutes straight. I'll try to be mindful of that. Please submit questions. Alex, I may stop kind of halfway through as well. If you see any great questions that are jumping out from the team and the attendees, let's certainly discuss those maybe halfway through as a good break.
No problem.
With that, again, I want to thank you all for the time. As Steve mentioned, my name is Grant Farnsworth. I'm a managing partner at the Farnsworth Group. For those that aren't familiar with our firm, we are a custom research firm that's focused exclusively in the building products, hardware, home improvement industry. We've been studying the industry now for a little over 30 years, both on the consumer side as well as the contractor side of the industry, primarily around customer behaviors, product development needs, brand health, and market sizing. So always happy to discuss with anyone on the line in more detail how we can help your organization get a deeper understanding of these 4 areas. Again, we're hyper-focused on industry and apply methodologies to help, again, get answers that you all may need. There's the sales pitch. On to some information. As I mentioned, we started about 2.5 months ago a weekly tracker of home improvement behaviors being impacted by COVID. We did this in partnership with a group called the Home Improvement Research Institute. I know there's a few of you that have registered whose organizations are members of HERE. HERE is a great secondary source for all things home improvement. If you are not a member, check out HIRI.org. And again, it's probably the best secondary source of home improvement data. It's all exclusive to members, but a great resource for you to check out. So a big thanks to them as we put this together a couple months ago. Each week we talk to 1,000 DIYers. Equal representation across Gen Y, Gen X, and Boomers. And each week we talk to roughly 300 residential trades. Most of them were remodelers, so kind of generalist. And then the other half, around half, were specialty trades, so landscapers, painters, electricians, etc. But again, the idea is to get representation from the existing home residential community about what is being impacted because of COVID. Today, we're going to look starting at the DIY results, and then we'll follow that up with the contractors. First and foremost, before we even get into our data, who is happy to see May numbers come out? Right? So I think there was maybe an expectation, a concern, given 2008 is fresh for some of us that have been around for a little bit, that we're going to have another 2008, that the sky is going to fall, that the world is going to come to an end. Certainly on the retail side of things, that almost couldn't be further from the truth. We've got manufacturing clients as well as some of our retail and channel clients who are having some of the best months, not just that they've had in a few years, but that their company has ever had. So I think for those of us that were well positioned and highly engaged in the DIY market, these last few months have really been quite impressive. I think we're up about 6%, a little over 6% year to date compared to 2019. You can see what happened in the last recession in these gray bars. Certainly did fall off a cliff. Not the case today. So I want to use that as an underlying theme that I think we're all aware of, again, for those that have heavy exposure to the DIY market. And why is that? Well, when we look at the data and the behaviors of what we're seeing from DIY, not only was the DIY market strong from the beginning of COVID, but it's actually gotten better as we've gone through it. So this is directly from our weekly tracker asking simply, have you started a DIY project in the last week? And all the respondents are homeowners that have decision-making authority within their household. And again, you can see, that linear progression of going from 60% up into the low 70s doing a project in the past week. That leaves only roughly 30% that haven't done a project, that have canceled or stopped or said, no, I'm not doing anything. and some of that is due to COVID. When we look at those that aren't doing work, when we look at those that are being impacted by COVID on the DIY side of things, why is that? Money and finance is jumping up to be the top concern. So we start seeing this interesting paradigm happening where we've got maybe the spenders and the savers, right? And I'm hesitant to use haves and have-nots because it's not necessarily a political discussion or going down a path, but there is a wealth gap that is probably going to be exacerbated coming out of this. And we're starting to see some hints of that happening right now. So we've got a good chunk that are already spending probably more than they were going to in DIY projects. They have their jobs, they have their home, they actually have more home equity than they did prior to COVID. So they're feeling pretty good. But then there's this small group that says, you know, not sure maybe what's happening with my job. Maybe I've had some furlough days. I'm a little bit more concerned with finance. So there's this implication that's happening right now where we've seen some categories upselling to the premium product, while we've got others saying, well, I need to accommodate, you know, those that are being price sensitive. So this price sensitivity discussion is one to keep in mind when you think about merchandising, when you think about your product assortment. And what is the danger of perhaps being caught in the middle? So it's an interesting dynamic happening where we're seeing some activity on the good side and the best side. Where does better come into play right now? And that's something that typically we don't see in prior recessions when it does become about price for the majority. Okay. Want to move on to some channel behaviors as well. So if you have purchased in the last month, where have you purchased? In-store has been and still is critical. What we want to highlight here, and we'll see even to a greater degree when we look at contractors, is the importance of online. Certainly online really got a bump when we look at research and shopping activity. We had our digital agency, Venveo, who's focused in the building product space, pull some numbers and looked at mid-March to mid-April, year over year, on terms that were specifically looking at Home Depot and Lowe's. In that month of mid-March to mid-April, Home Depot related searches jumped 150%, Lowe's searches jumped 200%. Categories, some categories saw insane increases in digital activity. Paint in that same period, mid-March to mid-April, was up 700% from a digital search compared to the prior year. So we know everyone was home. We know everyone has been online, whether it's social, whether it's researching product, et cetera, exploring ideas for the home. But we are also seeing that translate to some purchase behaviors, not just shopping and research, but it is translating. A little bit more subtle with DIYers. So we didn't see as big of an increase for online with DIY as we might have with the pro, but we did see an increase. And we don't expect that to go away. Again, in-store is still very, very important. We've got, you know, the strong majority saying, yeah, I bought in store, but we've also got about half saying I've done some online purchasing in the last month as well, as it relates specifically to hardware home improvement product. That's a big number. Prior to COVID, if we looked at this number last year, which the Farnsworth Group tracks, that number wasn't quite 50%. You know, maybe it was hovering around the 30s, somewhere around there. Okay, so we did see some traction as far as some channel behaviors, where they're going, how they're getting their product delivered. And I want to highlight, and we looked at a number of different categories in our weekly tracker. This is just a handful of them. This is not to blind you, but it is to tell you that no category is immune to some digital impact, to some online purchasing behavior. Even those that are typically a low incidence online purchase like paint and sundries saw a little bit of a bump here and there with online purchasing. So again, depending on what your merchandising mix is, what your product mix is, what your category mix is, don't feel that you're immune to some of these shifts that we see happening right now in the digital landscape. We were already trending there. We know that, right? But COVID certainly gave us a shot of adrenaline in the arm for online behaviors. And I think some of these are going to stick around for quite some time. If you said COVID was a reason that you went online instead of in store, what was it about COVID that got you to do that? Health concerns, first and foremost, we're aware of. The health concern is driving, obviously, the biggest issues and challenges that we're all facing, not only in personal lives, professional lives, et cetera. once we get past the health concerns, we see this blue line pretty level, but ticking up over the last few weeks of our tracker. That blue line is availability. The store didn't have what I needed in stock. This may become more important as contractors are coming back, as home builders are coming back, as DIY activity remains strong. This idea of availability is going to open up some opportunities for us, not only as retail, but as manufacturers, whether we think about product shift, brand shift, channel shift, okay? Availability is becoming so important right now that Amazon's satisfaction ratings are actually at an all-time low across a number of countries. And it's directly associated to people being frustrated that they can't get the product as quickly as they were getting prior to COVID. Some of this is inventory levels, right? But we know a lot of this has to do with prioritization of category and product. Certain things are getting delivered before we package and ship out others. This is translating into a lower satisfaction rating, highlighting the importance of availability. I want stuff now. I've been used to getting it now. So whoever can get it to me now might win. So here's another implication. Availability may lead to some opportunities for channel, brand, and product shift. We are certainly seeing that happen today. And availability may be something that can overcome some price sensitivity if that starts to creep up. So really dig into your customers, really dig into your market. This is, kind of broad statements we're making across all DIY, but you really need to understand what the hierarchy of needs is for DIYers in your category, in your market, etc. Is availability the most important thing? Is it price? Is it being able to buy online? Try to understand that, because right now there's a lot of shifting that may be happening across channel, brand, and product. Great opportunity. Now let's look at future behavior. And the Farnsworth Group is not an economist firm. Don't know that I want to be a weatherman trying to predict what's going to happen 2-3 years out. So when we talk about future, we're really thinking next 30, 60 days. Okay, near term, because as we all know, the situation is still very, very fluid, almost on a daily basis with everything that we have going on. Okay, so for the near term, we asked DIYers, are you planning any DIY projects within the next few weeks? What we are seeing is that red line, which is definitely will start some projects, continues to be very strong. And when we look over the trend for the last 10 weeks, it's actually ticking up. So not only do we see projects that have been completed remaining strong and moving up over the last 10 weeks, we see project intent remain strong. So this would indicate that certainly for us, as we look at the data, we would anticipate continued strength in the DIY market for the next 30 to 60 days, barring any major unforeseen macro, environmental, macroeconomic, challenges. No reason to think that the DIY market is just going to fall off the table come tomorrow. We also see with this, when we look at it by generation, that it has continued to be driven by the younger generations. Okay, boomers may still have the wealth, and they may be responsible for the spend when it comes to remodeling and hiring out. But when we look at DIY activity, we see the same story that we've seen for decades, which is the younger the generation, the more likely they are to engage with those DIY projects. Okay, so the activity is there, the intent is there. The next, again, I would say month, 2 month window looks pretty safe. Let's think about spending as well. So we did ask, are you planning to spend more or less than maybe you did prior to COVID or the normal? And we see a similar pattern here. So that yellow bar is same amount as usual, but that blue bar, which is up there for all generations, is, yeah, I'm planning to spend a little bit more. So a lot of questions have been going around over these last couple of months of, is this additive sales that we're seeing at retail, or is this pull forward? Based on our historicals, based on the data we're seeing today, we know early springs typically lead to additive sales. And we see data right now that supports the argument that this is additive. It may vary by category. So again, dig into your particular space, dig into your market, but holistically, this looks to be additive sales, which is a very positive thing. Okay. We also got to keep in mind that disposable income patterns have changed. I was just reading an article today that the wealthy aren't spending their money right on baseball games and theater and expensive trips, etc. We're all kind of in that same boat. For the last couple of months, you didn't really have anywhere to spend your money except going to a home improvement store, right? So we've seen a shift in where money can be spent, and again, that doesn't appear to be going away anytime soon. Despite markets opening back up, there are still big health concerns with homeowners around travel, around going out, around having people in their home, etc. So again, next 30 days certainly seems to be pretty healthy. Takeaways from the DIY research that we've done: pricing, as I mentioned up top. Pay attention to financial concerns. Right? How big does that group become? And how dynamic do we have one group saying, yeah, I've got actually a lot of money to spend because I'm not spending it anywhere else, versus this other group that says, yeah, I'm kind of sensitive towards spending money right now, and price is important to me, right? Be mindful of getting caught in the middle there. Something to watch within your categories, within your market. Availability, we talked about this. Availability, as that becomes more of a concern, may drive some opportunity for channel, product, and brand shift. So pay attention, understand what the needs of the customers are, what they want, when they want, and how they want it. And with that is channel. So know where your customers are going, and meet them where they are. We know it's at least online for information capture. And we're also seeing some modest trends in online purchase behavior as well. So meet them where they're at, know what information they're looking for, and deliver the product to them in a manner that they want it. Hard to see people taking away these benefits of curbside pickup as we go forward. How are we meeting those needs? How are we meeting those expectations? What new expectations do DIYers have when it comes to purchasing with you? Okay, so there's still some opportunities out there for the DIY market. I think you all know that. We've seen the data in the retail sales numbers. You've probably seen it on your end. I know our clients have seen it in some cases up 20, 30% year over year. So certainly some real good opportunities on the DIY side. And Alex, I will take a breath there to see if there's anything pressing that we should maybe discuss before we launch into some contractor results.
All right. I do not see any questions currently in the chat, but please, if anybody does have something, fire away in the chat, or I guess since we don't have anything, if you want to just unmute yourself real quick and chime in, please, by all means.
I guess that just means we're right on point then, Alex.
It sounds like you're being extremely thorough.
Okay, well, moving on then to some contractor results. So we'll kind of go through the same process here. We'll look at really what's happening today with contractors, and we'll take a stab at maybe what's happening kind of down the road. Keep in mind, this is about existing homes. So we're talking mostly to remodelers, contractors focused on repair, remodel, replacement. Don't want to negate all the positives that are happening right now on the new housing side. That is an area that we play in as well. If you haven't seen, housing starts jumped, I believe it was 4%, if I'm correct, in May. And then permits jumped about 14%. Some markets stronger than others, but we're kind of seeing the same thing now with the contractor piece as we've been seeing the last couple of months with the DIY piece. And that is, sky hasn't fallen, right? Maybe this isn't as bad. On the new building side, I know when this hit, a lot of manufacturers, a lot of corporations had a big, quick, knee-jerk reaction. We're going to stop everything. Starts are going to fall to 500,000. It's just going to be 2008 all over again. And then we started easing off that. Well, maybe we'll get up to 700 starts. Well, maybe we'll get up to 900,000 starts. Right now, it looks like the forecasts are coming in around 1.1 for 2020. So still down from prior years. That would, if we hit 1.1, that would be back to levels of 2015, somewhere thereabouts. But again, we're seeing some positive sides on the new housing side. Looking at the existing home side and impacts that contractors are feeling with those types of projects, no surprise they've seen delays or stoppage. And that's almost regardless of what size of firm they are. Historical cycles will tell us the larger the firm, the more likely they are to fare better in recessions. We do see some signs of that this cycle as well, but all have been hit by this. All have been affected. Okay, so we are still seeing some delays, some stoppage over the last several weeks. And we asked, well, what was it about COVID that caused those delays? What was it about COVID that caused some project stoppage? No surprise, that red line is homeowner concerns around health. Right? I didn't want contractors in my home. What's interesting is when we look at that yellow line, contractors not feeling comfortable being in someone's home. So it's not just homeowner side concerns that might have delayed and stopped this stuff. Some contractors also had some fears and concerns until they really knew what was going on, had some safety protocols in place. These health concerns are going to remain, but what we've seen from a lot of contractors and those that we've been talking to, they are now putting in place messages, procedures to ensure protection and safety of the homeowner. And homeowners are starting to feel, even though they may be concerned, at least feeling a little bit more comfortable with the idea of having a rep in their home, having a contractor in their home. So that may be softening a little bit, which is positive news. Once we get away from health, what we want to look at here is also homeowners becoming concerned about finances. And that's that blue line. So again, we go back to this pricing, budget, kind of financial awareness conversation. Something we all need to monitor and see how it impacts our category, our merchandising, et cetera. Typically, budget concerns more impact durable goods, higher price point finished product than it does the consumables, but a conversation we need to be paying attention to. So again, pricing implications potentially to meet budget. Want to see how those continue going forward. Certainly can have some implications on what products are purchased, our merchandising mix, product assortment, et cetera, as contractors try to stay within budgets, yet still get the project done. Looking at project requests, and we bring this up as a way to almost visually highlight what we potentially saw as the bottom in mid-April on the contractor side of our industry. Left part of this page are those smaller firms, so 750 in annual revenue or less. And that purple line is the percent saying that our project requests are much lower. And you can see that real nice curve where that highest peak was right around mid-April of those saying, yeah, our requests are much lower. It's been coming down since then. And while overall requests are still lower, we're now getting the sentiment of, yes, it's somewhat lower. We've got a group that are saying, hey, it's actually kind of the same. And believe it or not, we've got, call it 20% that are saying, I actually have more requests coming in now than I did, prior to COVID or normal times. We see a similar thing on the right-hand side with the larger firms. As we look at those saying same as expected, it really bottoms out in April and starts coming back up to some normalcy as we move over the last few weeks. So some positive signs as we think about the contractor market and where we may have bottomed out. This isn't to say that there aren't challenges ahead, particularly for the contractor space, but it's to say maybe the worst is behind us. And we see, this is why I brought up some of the new housing numbers at the beginning. We see a very similar trend on the new housing side as well. When you look at the back half of April going into May, we saw more deposits, we saw more requests, we saw more starts. May continue that trend upward. The residential existing home market for contractors appears to be following that same type of pattern. Moreover, we see a little bit of a return to some confidence when we look at this index, which we do on a quarterly basis. This is the Farnsworth Group Contractor Index, and you can see at the end here, lost my pointer, but you can see these last two quarters. Q2 was at the end of March. I'm sorry, Q1 was at the end of March. Q2 was beginning of June. And they're already starting to feel a little bit more confident in their business. Again, there's work to be done. We're still below this great, healthy, kind of booming market that we've had for the last few years, but we're already seeing a rebound in contractor sentiment and confidence versus where we were at the end of March. If you saw the builder confidence numbers from NAHB, similar picture. Okay, so we start weaving all these data points together, and it may be the case that truly mid-April was the bottom of the market. To highlight that even further, thanks to a number of our clients and colleagues, this is a visualization of over 140 contractor wholesale locations around the US. The bars at the top of this page are actual bids sent out every single day starting the week of March 9th all the way through the week of June 8th. You'll see two bars drop every now and again. That's Saturday, Sunday. This is a great visual, in my opinion, of showing that the bottom really was this mid-April timeframe. We've been slowly rebounding with contractors towards the end of April and up until today. The bottom part of this chart shows actual sales of these 140 plus wholesale locations. April, boy, not great. Started off the year real great, right? We all know that. We were looking forward to this year. I think many of us were. First quarter, fantastic. April, oh my gosh, how long is this going to last? The world is coming to an end. May came around. Okay, this may not be as bad as we thought. And here comes June. Wow, we're actually doing better this year than last. Not as positive as what we're seeing on the DIY retail side of the world, but the contractor market is starting to come back. When we look at those that are doing more business, when we look at those that are increasing their closure rates, that are staying pretty active and engaged, we ask, what is it about? You know, how have you been able to maintain a good level of business during COVID, if you have? And we see some things around health and well-being, projects related to those types of topics, homeowners wanting solutions for healthy home, improvement in the health of the home, etc. So there may be some opportunity, again, when we think about how we're positioning our product, how we're positioning our brand, et cetera, what's our relationship to some healthy home and well-being projects and activities? There may be a little bit of opportunity there for us in a space that was already gaining some steam prior to COVID. This is one more area. We talked about online getting a shot of adrenaline. This healthy home narrative might have received the same bump. Keeping on the project theme, are you seeing smaller or larger projects? In prior cycles, when we're in recessions, project size drops pretty dramatically. Equity has typically been gone. So as we think about 2008, right? Home values dropped, so equity's dropped, which means I don't have $100,000 to redo the kitchen, right? I'm just going to do the basic repairs that I need with my HVAC and my roof. It's kind of a different picture right now. So we still have some saying, you know, it's going to be smaller, but it's somewhat smaller. We've got a good chunk saying, yeah, it's the same as before. And we even have, you know, call it 15, 20%. They're saying it's actually larger. And that's a different dynamic than we've seen in prior cycles. And a lot of that has to do with some of the fundamentals that are different than prior cycles. Home values being one of those. Okay. You have your job, you still have your home. Chances are you've got some equity to still do some big project work. Compound that with the fact that we've all been nesting now for the last 2-3 months. There is going to be an imprint on how we think about our homes, how we view our homes. We've seen this with the DIY space. Painting an office, doing an outdoor project. Go try to find an above ground pool right now, right? Good luck. This is going to happen with contractor behavior as well. And we're starting to hear this in small pockets around the country as we talk to contractors through our research. Some are reporting they're actually doing larger projects because the homeowners have decided they want to better utilize the interior space of their house. They want to more enjoy it. If they're going to be trapped for months at a time, gosh darn it, it's going to be a home I love. We're seeing things like networking and home entertainment get some bumps. Okay, so there's going to be some opportunities when we think about potential project shift, how our product, how our stores, you know, what our message is to address some of these changing project needs and desires of homeowners, whether it is project size or project type. Want to touch, of course, on channel with the contractors as well. So same question, where have you purchased your building materials over the last week? Here we see much more dramatic shifts in the contractors than we did with DIY. That red line is in store, still important. But look at what happened to those smaller firms. One, some of their purchasing just went away. And that really took a hit on in-store. They didn't stop all of their online purchases. If they weren't buying, they weren't going into the store. Two, look at the right-hand side. The larger firms, much more aggressive on increasing their online purchase behavior than the smaller firms. Okay, not that in-store is not important, but for those of you that might have a lumber yard or have some sort of exposure to contractor business, the larger the firm, we're seeing the more likely they are to really start incorporating some online purchase behaviors than they did prior to COVID. Always been important, but my gosh, it might be a little bit more level of a playing field right now. Very, very important to think as you look at your business. What type of customer do you have? What are their needs? What are their expectations when making purchases? Be very, very mindful of that as you think about some opportunities to either steal share or potentials to lose share when it comes to channel. Why did they go online instead of in store? Same thing, health. Okay, so Let's name it. We know health is a big issue across everybody. That's going to be the number one concern kind of across the board. Once we get past that, look at that yellow line, particularly with the smaller contracting firms. Supplier didn't have what I needed in stock. This is going up for the smaller firms. This may continue to go up as business comes back. DIY remains strong, so they're buying some product. More contractors are getting more business, so they're buying more product. What happens to availability? We know of a number of manufacturers that may have factories in the US, but a lot of parts and components come from around the world, and there's some logistical issues to that. Lead times may have gone from 6 weeks to 15. What does availability mean to our opportunity to gain brand product channel share? What does availability mean to the pro customer? Where is it in their hierarchy of needs? That is something they probably haven't had to worry about for the last few years. It may be today. So really dig and try to understand that, because we're seeing some concerns around availability and the implications it's having on where they're buying product. Okay. Gonna finish up here right on time. Hopefully everyone's still awake. The future impacts with the contractor behavior. And again, we're gonna keep this kind of next 30, 60 days, really barring any unforeseen catastrophic events, either economic, environmental, et cetera. How concerned are you about COVID negatively impacting your business? And this is kind of glass half full. So there are still concerns. Inherently, there's many more challenges on the contractor front than there are on the DIY front. But what we can say is that their level of concern is decreasing over time, right? We look again at the quarterly contractor index we put together, and this is truly about business confidence. How confident are you in your company's ability to get business over the next 6 months? And we've seen that start to rebound just slightly, but not continue down into this cavern. So yes, I'm still concerned. I'm not as concerned as I was 3 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, 2 months ago. Okay. So again, positive sentiment, increase in positive sentiments, and further support that the bottom really was probably that mid-April timeframe when we look at the contractor behavior. What are they most concerned about? The blue line, the yellow line that you're looking at there, that's health concerns. Take that out of the equation. We know that's still a big concern, not only for homeowners, but also for contractors, safety of their staff, et cetera. Finances, paying their bills. When we talk to contractors about the delays they had, they expected projects to be delayed around 3 months. We are now right at that 3-month window from when the market kind of shut down to today. So their expectation is that, yeah, things are going to start coming back on board now. So I think they're all seeing maybe some returns, needing some returns, and expecting those returns. And until they're really confident with that, they still have this financial concern about really paying the bills, keeping the lights on. Okay. Beyond that, let's look at some of these other needs out of this list that we provided them. Ability to get leads and project requests. Think about if you are engaged with contractors, selling contractors over the last few years, how many were just begging for leads? Not a lot. If they're worth their salt, not a lot, right? Our research was showing trades in some areas are turning down anywhere from 5 to 10% of the projects that came into their door. They had enough work. What was your role as a manufacturer? What was your role as a supplier for the contractors? It was more than likely, or should have been, supporting them with their business, building out products that were quick install so they could move on to the next job, building out products that had killer warranties and would last a lifetime so they didn't have to make repairs, helping them on the sales side, get them products delivered as quickly as you could, repairing any of the broken products that were delivered, keeping them going, keeping their head above water because they had so much work coming in. Look at what's happening today. I need some help with leads. I just told you that my requests are down. That would be a great thing. Look at what's at the bottom, ability to find labor. That has been a dead horse that I think we've all beaten in this industry for the last few years. Labor, there's no skilled labor. We can't find truck drivers. Labor, labor, labor. That's at the bottom of the list right now. So dig into your customer, into your market to understand what is their hierarchy of needs right now, because I can almost bet you that it's going to be different today than it was just 6 or 12 months ago. So your marketing message might need to change. Your sales approach might need to change. Your product mix, right? Think about all these things that you might need to adjust to accommodate today's hierarchy of needs, particularly with the contractor. To that point, they're anticipating doing a little bit less volume than they had prior to COVID. You need to be mindful of that's going to drive a shift in what's important to them, what they need, what they look to suppliers for, what they look to manufacturers for. So your role as a manufacturer supplier should have changed, could be changing. Really dig into your specific trades that you deal with, dig into your customers, dig into your market, dig into your category to understand the needs of an electrician versus the needs of a painter versus the needs of a builder, remodeler, et cetera, because it's going to vary. The important message is that we can't be doing business the same way today as we were the last few years because they're under a completely different pressure today and have a different need set today. So summary of the contractor piece, then we'll launch into some questions, Alex. So get ready, big finish. First and foremost, pricing. So we saw this as well with DIYers. Pay attention to some of the financial concerns that homeowners are putting on their contractors. It may have an impact on budget, particularly with those durable goods. Understand how purchase decisions are being made with the contractors that you work with. Projects, again, due to some nesting, maybe some health concerns being more elevated, there could be some different project opportunities in this cycle that maybe we haven't seen prior. More emphasis put on outdoor space, more emphasis put on office space, et cetera. And channel, go where your customers are, right? We saw this a little bit more dramatic with contractors than we did with DIY. They're not just going online to shop anymore. Particularly larger contractors are going online to buy. How do they want products delivered? How do they want to purchase? How are you meeting those needs? Understand what your customer wants, when they want it, how they want it. And then certainly look at your role. What is your role today? How has it changed? How should it change compared to how you were addressing particularly the contractor market, although also the DIY market for the past few years? Really dig into that customer behavior, understand their needs so you can better respond now. Because if I was a betting man, a lot of the behaviors that we're seeing today are going to be sticking around for at least the next few years to come. We've all been imprinted in one way or another, both personally and professionally, by this experience. We've all learned to do things differently overnight that we haven't had to deal with before. Some of that has become more comfortable, more convenient. We've tried new brands because we've had no other options. So there's going to be a lot of behaviors that maybe stick around. How are you leveraging that? What is your role in supporting not only DIY, but contractors as well? With that, I am right at 40. So I, again, want to thank everybody for their time. Hopefully we see continued success in the DIY space. We continue to see improvements on the contractor side. Happy to chat with you further with your organization or one-on-one, either about the research and information that we're seeing in the home improvement hardware and building product market. And of course, happy to discuss any specific research needs to help you dig a little bit deeper and understand your customer, your brand, or your product. Thanks again, y'all.
Thank you, Grant. Really appreciate it. That was a lot of great information, and we looks like have generated a couple of questions here. So if you're ready, I maybe can start firing off a couple to you.
We'll see what happens.
Sounds good. So we had one, wondering if you had any information or insight as to who exactly is driving the purchases with PPE type products. So whether it's, hand sanitizers, masks, anything like that specifically.
And is that going down a path, I wonder, Alex, of, facility managers versus the contractors and maybe what trade?
Sure, yeah.
Don't know. Again, that's a whole other kind of category discussion. So I think we can start digging into some of these niche categories to find out. I don't know. I can tell you that personally, I've talked with a number of contracting firms that are taking it upon themselves. So the owner, the proprietor of the firm, kind of setting the rules and regulations, being the one that's placing the orders, getting boxes of masks, gloves, footies, et cetera. So I don't know that we've seen really a pattern or have even started researching a pattern for the commercial side of the world when we think about multifamily, hospitality, et cetera. But that's a great question. Sorry, I don't have the answer.
We got another one here that I think is particularly relevant, but have you seen any results or have any insight into made in USA products versus import products?
Yeah. So great question. This is always a fun topic. Here's what we see, um, and we've seen this in prior cycles. There is a politically correct response when someone asks you, is made in the USA important when you buy a product? You will have everybody tell you, absolutely, absolutely it is. The reality of it is, when we look at true sales, USA, made in USA becomes important when all things typically are equal. So if the performance is the same, the feature set's the same, gosh, maybe if it's 2% more, fine. But if everything's the same and then made in USA is there, great, I'll take that one. We do, however, see made in the USA, local, kind of homegrown message resonate in healthy markets. So I would say made in the USA was actually probably more viable prior to COVID, when people were comfortable and confident spending money. Buying local was actually probably more receptive, I would argue, prior to COVID, when people had money, when people were confident, than it is now. That's not to say that it's not important or you can't get a bump from made in the USA or being local, but I can tell you, if you're leading with that message and availability is more important to that person, if you're dealing with a price sensitive consumer, right? You may be missing the mark if that is your lead story. So again, it can vary by category, but I would say it's not usually as important as what they may tell you is important. Look at the retail data, and you'll see that unequivocally almost time after time after time.
Very interesting. Okay, we've got one more here. So as we start to see sports, professional college sports resume, and people beginning to spend their disposable income on different activities, whether it be travel or attending events, do you anticipate a dip in the strength of the home improvement market, based on the data you've seen so far? Is it kind of hard to tell?
Yeah, this is a great question. I think that's that more future-looking, cloudy crystal ball. Don't know. Do we just get back to normal spend of remodeling and home improvement activity, knowing that we're going to be, going out to some restaurants, maybe we're going to a ball game? So is it a dip versus just return to, where we typically see retail numbers? I would expect more of a return as opposed to a dip. Again, we believe this is additive sales. So when you look at that disposable income picture, they aren't necessarily pulling money away from entertainment to go spend it on home improvement. They're spending on home improvement without going into debt. They're spending on home improvement without stealing from something else. So, they haven't been robbing Peter to pay Paul, as they say, for this increased retail spend that we've seen this year so far. So therefore, we would expect that as they start going out to spend elsewhere, we just aren't going to see these 20, 30% gains that we've been seeing month over month for some companies. Maybe we're just back to these normal patterns that we've seen over the last few years. That would be my guess. I still think it's going to be a while before we see a large shift to high discretionary spend on big vacations, etc. So I think we may have bought ourselves some time to capture some of their dollar that otherwise might have been 10 grand going down to Disney World for a week. I think we're still a ways away, in my 2 cents. Total personal opinion, no one knows. But I think we've got a little bit of time before we really see the impact of people truly going out and spending elsewhere.
Makes a lot of sense.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Is baseball going to start up, Alex? Who knows?
So let's see. I've got another one here. What impact do you see with the co-ops and distributors going into full virtual shows as we go into the fall season?
Oh man, listen, I can tell you what I've been hearing from some folks that have participated in a couple. I think that's more of a question for the trades and for the co-ops. I think there are some inherent challenges, and this is coming from a cat who travels quite a bit and loves to be face to face and shake hands. So I'm probably a little bit biased, but I think there are inherent challenges doing a virtual that you are just not going to be able to overcome. The hands-on, the touch, the feel, the demo, the impromptu conversations that happen. the lengthy conversations that happen. So, I think we're all doing a great job at finding solutions as best we can. I don't know if a mass virtual event is maybe going to end up being the ideal solution. I know people are starting to use, the Zoom groups and breakouts and. So I think we're going to continue to refine how we simulate these in-person exercises. And my guess is that having 3,000 contractors, 10,000 contractors attend a virtual trade show, a virtual buying market might not be the ideal approach for everyone involved. And I've talked to people on both sides, and I know that there's still some wrinkles to work out if I'm listening to the feedback on these virtual events.
Yeah, well said. It's definitely a challenge that obviously we've been experiencing as well, but it's definitely interesting to see how people get creative.
Figure it out. I mean, we have this. I mean, think about all the things that have been figured out in healthcare. My wife is a kindergarten and second grade teacher. She's figured out how to teach kindergartners remotely. Surely, if we can do that, we can get some engagement with some contractors, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So this is actually more an observation than a question, but directed primarily to vendor partners as it pertains to product demand and supply channel issues. But the observation was, don't forget about the two-step channel, as out-the-door fill rates, I think by and large, are starting to slip a little bit because of the lack of material and supply.
Yep, great point.
One more observation on the manufacturing side, that they found some of the domestic manufacturers have found USA made has been much faster to adjust to demand, because we can get supplies faster when they're made here domestically.
Yep, absolutely. And I think it's a great observation. We've heard, we have manufacturers that are solely sourced and produced in the US. We have some that are kind of a hybrid. We have some that are exclusively overseas. And I think that's probably a true statement. So the more control you have right now over domestic production, you certainly do seem to have a leg up right now versus those that are maybe seeing their lead times increase just due to logistics around the world.
Great. One more here quick, and then I think we could probably wrap up if anyone has anything else. But, primarily we've been talking about contractors and that sort of thing, but any insight into the lawn and garden trends, whether they're up and down, because I think a lot of our members and manufacturers have been reporting pretty strong sales in the lawn and garden retail market.
Yeah, we're seeing the same kind of across all categories within lawn and garden. I mean, I know some of the OPE space is going pretty gangbusters, and they're starting to get worried about running out of inventory. I think we kind of hit everything perfectly for the lawn and garden space. Some markets had a nice early strong spring in conjunction with the fact that people are home the whole time, in conjunction with the fact that if I'm going to be stuck at home, I need to get outside, my kids need to get outside. So I think there's this kind of this perfect storm for lawn and garden. Again, Alex, our data and takeaway would suggest that it's additive sales. We don't see this being, again, high spend this year and it all of a sudden just going away next. Maybe a little bit on the higher price point goods, we'll see. But I think it was just kind of everything coming together for the DIY space. We saw and continue to see real strong performance across the board when we think about outdoor lawn and garden.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Grant. We really appreciate you coming on and taking the time to give us this great overview. Obviously, we're all very affected by this, and having all this insight certainly helps us when making decisions and kind of just analyzing the market. So thank you very much.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, y'all. Stay safe and stay well.
You do the same. All right, guys. Well, if you